On paper, my employer is a private security contractor based somewhere in northern Italy, specializing in heritage protection and high-risk religious sites. On paper, my job sounds important. The contract calls it Secure Containment Oversight for High-Risk Environments, which is the kind of phrase you put on a badge when you don't want anyone to ask follow-up questions. The company itself has a name long enough to sound respectable in Latin, though everyone in the barracks just calls it the firm. We're technically a private security contractor based somewhere in northern Italy. In practice, we have one real client and one real building, the walled city-state with its museums on the postcards and its secrets under the floor. The Vatican doesn't like to admit it hires outsiders for anything delicato, but concrete and cameras and alarm systems are beneath the dignity of cardinals. They pray. We watch. They bless. We badge in. Somewhere between those two layers is where my shift lives. I didn't start in the dark. For my first year with the firm, I worked normal posts, normal by Vatican standards anyway. Night watch in archive corridors where the only threat was humidity. Door duty outside rooms full of relics behind bulletproof glass. Monitoring quiet halls and administrative wings where the biggest excitement was a Monsignor forgetting his access card. Those corridors had light. Too much of it sometimes. Halogens humming overhead. Green bars over the emergency exits. Lamps focused on old wood and older paint. You could see dust motes. You could see your own face reflected in a polished reliquary lid. Then, after 12 uneventful months and one thorough psychological re-evaluation, they told me I'd been selected for Delta. My supervisor called me into the same windowless office where I'd signed my original NDA. The coffee stain on his desk hadn't moved since the first time I sat there. "You've done good work," he said without smiling. "Reliable. Boring. We like boring." "Thank you," I said. "Because boring is the highest praise you get in this line of work." He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. No header. No logo. Just 3 bullet points in 2 languages. Italian first, then English. Sublevel Delta. Chamber 0 protocols. You will not introduce or permit the introduction of any light source into Chamber 0. This includes, but is not limited to, fixed lighting, portable lamps, candles, ignition sources, camera flashes, infrared beams, lasers. You will not attempt visual access to the interior of Chamber 0. This includes any direct line of sight through the door, any borescopes, fiber optics, cameras, or other remote viewing devices. You will not override or tamper with any sensor array associated with Chamber 0 without written authorization from both the firm and the Holy See. I read it twice before looking up. "Chamber 0, I said. "Is that some kind of storage room?" "If it was just storage, they'd have let the Swiss Guard keep it," he said. "This is special." The way he said special made my skin crawl. "What's in it?" I asked. He shook his head once. "Your badge doesn't come with that level of curiosity," he said. "Need to know, and you don't. What you do need is to understand the job." He took the sheet back, flipped it over, and drew a quick diagram. A rectangle for the chamber, a thick line for the door, a little box for the station. "You'll be on sub-level Delta," he said. "Farther down than Archive C, deeper than the tourist catacombs, below the old cistern lines. There's a short corridor that ends in one door. No windows, no side passages. Halfway down that corridor is your post." He tapped the little box. "Desk, monitors, sensor panel, comm line. Your task is simple. You watch the numbers. Pressure, temperature, vibration, magnetics. If anything changes in the patterns we've spent decades calling normal, you log it and you call control. You do not try to fix it yourself. You do not improvise." "What about patrols?" I asked. "Rounds? External checks?" "You do not walk past the yellow line painted on the floor," he said. "You will see it when you get there. You do not approach the door unless ordered. You do not open it. You do not look into any gap if someone else opens it. You're there to observe the indicators, not the contents." "So I'm guarding a room I never enter," I said. "You're guarding the rest of the building from whatever's already in it," he said. I waited for a joke. A smirk. Anything that would tell me this was hazing. Some elaborate initiation prank for the new guy. He didn't blink. "How long has this chamber been there?" I asked. "Longer than our contract," he said. "Longer than your life. Maybe longer than my life if you believe the old men with the keys. The firm didn't build it. We just added the toys around it." He pushed a second sheet across the desk. This one was a list of instruments. External sensor array, chamber 0. Floor pressure cells, 16. Acoustic microphones, 8. Seismic pickups, 4. Thermal probes, 4. Magnetometer panel, 1. Air composition sampler, 1. All strapped to the outside of the box, he said. We don't put anything inside, not anymore. That anymore stuck in my ear. What happened last time someone tried? I asked. He considered the question, then shrugged one shoulder. Depends how many stories you want to believe, he said. Officially? Equipment failure? Unofficially? Every camera we ran into that space burned out within minutes. Every infrared beam went wild. Someone tried an old-fashioned light bulb once, years ago. They say it popped the moment the door cracked, and everything in the corridor went dark for 3 days. 3 days? He gave me a thin smile. Welcome to Delta. They gave me a new badge with an extra stripe. They gave me another stack of forms to sign. They gave me a locker in the deeper barracks, closer to the guts of the building. And at 2300 hours on a Tuesday, they put me in an unmarked service elevator with my supervisor, and sent us down. The Vatican above ground is a patchwork of centuries. Down here, it's all poured concrete and rebar. The elevator hummed past levels I knew. B1 for standard storage, B2 for archives, B3 for the stuff no one admits exists, and kept going. The indicator lights changed from numbers to blank segments. The air grew cooler, then cooler still. When the doors slid open, there was no little ding. Sublevel Delta smelled like stone that hasn't seen daylight in a very long time. The corridor outside the elevator was narrow, just wide enough for 2 men to pass shoulder to shoulder. The walls were raw concrete, the ceiling low. Strip lights hummed overhead, their plastic covers yellowed with age. Someone had painted a line across the floor about 10 meters from the elevator, a thick band of yellow, with the words, "Stop, post limit" in black letters. Beyond that line, the corridor stretched another 10 meters and ended in a single door. It was not like the other doors in the building. Most Vatican doors try to be pretty. Carved wood, brass handles, little plaques with Latin inscriptions. This one was a rectangle of dull metal set flush into the wall, thick enough that the edges cast their own shadows. There was no handle on this side, just 3 heavy hinges and a recessed slot where a bar could be inserted. A series of bolts and hasps ringed the frame, but none of them were in use. Whatever held it shut was internal. Where other doors would have a number or a saint's name, this one had a small metal plate bolted to the wall beside it. The plate said simply, Chamber 0. Access. External only. Someone had drawn a cross next to it in pen. Someone else had tried to scrub it off. The faint outline remained. My station sat exactly where the diagram had promised. A metal desk bolted to the floor on the safe side of the yellow line, facing the door. 2 flat panel monitors mounted on arms, a sensor panel with rows of LEDs and digital readouts, a landline phone, a red emergency button under a flip-up cover. Half a dozen cables ran from the back of the equipment along the ceiling and into the walls on either side of the door, feeding into gray junction boxes studded with more little lights. My supervisor walked me to the line and stopped there. From here forward, you do not cross unless ordered and logged, he said. Understood. Understood, I said. He gestured at the desk. Sit. I did. The chair creaked. The monitors blinked awake. One showed a live feed from a camera mounted behind and above me, watching the corridor and the door. The other showed the sensor readout. Pressure grid, 0.00 kPa. Vibration, nominal. Acoustic, 72 dB. Thermal, 13.4 degrees C. Wall, 13.1 degrees C. Door exterior. Magnetic, baseline. Air composition, normal. Chamber itself is behind that, he said, nodding at the door. Meters of stone. No vents, no conduit penetrations. The only path in or out is that rectangle. And the inside? I asked, even though I already knew what he'd say. No light, he said. No cameras, no sensors, no nothing. Just volume and whatever it holds. What does it hold? I asked. He looked at me for a long second. You planning to open it and check? No, I said quickly. Then it doesn't matter, he said. Your world stops here. He pointed at the sensor panel again. We have 40+ years of baseline data, he said. Most nights nothing happens. Pressure stays flat. Temperature barely wiggles. You log every 15 minutes regardless. If any parameter crosses threshold, the corresponding light turns amber. You call control. If anything spikes hard, lights go red and you hit the button. Then you get away from the door until the cavalry tells you otherwise. Has it ever gone red? I asked. Once, he said. And? He shook his head. You don't want that story in your head 8 hours into a shift, he said. Trust me. He checked his watch. All right, Gatewatch, he said. The first time anyone had addressed me by the nickname instead of my job title. You're on until 7. I'll be topside. If you see anything you can't categorize or anything that makes you feel like standing up without knowing why, you call. He left in the elevator. The doors shut with a sound that felt too final. Silence settled in around. Not the silence of an empty office, with HVAC hum and distant footsteps. Not the soft murmur of distant traffic. This was the kind of silence you get when you put your head underwater, and the world above keeps moving. I watched the numbers. At first, the job was almost insultingly bland. 23, log, all readings nominal. 23:15, log, all readings nominal. 23:30, log, minor thermal fluctuation within baseline. 23:45, log, nominal. The door sat there at the end of the corridor, featureless and heavy. The concrete around it showed marks from when the sensor plates had been installed. A faint halo of discoloration ringed the frame where hands had pressed over the years, whether in testing or in prayer. Around midnight, boredom began to creep in, bringing its twin, imagination. I found myself thinking about what kind of thing you would go to such trouble to keep in the dark. The official line was easy enough. Dangerous artifacts? Hostile entities? The kind of things that wind up on the firm's internal training slides with the words, "Do not touch" in 3 languages. The old guards whispered other options. A room God doesn't look at, one had told me in the barracks, eyes a little too bright. Every kingdom has a place where it puts what it doesn't want on the record. You think heaven's any different? Another swore it was a failed miracle sealed away. Something they tried to make holy and couldn't, he'd said. So they buried it instead of admitting defeat. Everyone agreed on one thing. You don't shine a light on it. They swapped stories of experiments. Cameras that melted. Technicians who came back with temporary blindness after peeking through a crack. A portable work lamp whose bulb exploded the moment the door bolts turned, plunging an entire level into pitch black for hours. You know what they did after that, one of the older men had said. They didn't decide to leave it alone. They put more sensors on the outside. Same curiosity, more caution. Sitting there in the hum of the strip lights, eyes flicking between a dead corridor and a flat line of numbers, it was easy to tell myself those stories were just ways of making a boring post sound dramatic. Around 1 in the morning, the air changed. Not much. Just enough. The temperature readouts on the panel dipped by half a degree, then climbed back. A small, almost lazy wave. The system didn't consider it outside normal variance, so no lights changed, no alarms chimed. But the hairs on my forearms stood up. I logged it. Air 103, minor thermal dip, 0.5 degrees C, auto-corrected. No sound accompanied it. No creak of metal, no settling of stone. The silence pressed harder. At Air 130, the acoustic channel registered a blip. The way the system worked, the microphones on the wall around the door constantly fed into a filter that recorded anything above a very low threshold. Footsteps, knocks, voices, against the baseline hum of the building. Tonight, the baseline was almost perfectly flat. So when a little spike edged above it, my eyes went straight to the graph. It was small, short, half a second maybe, not loud enough to trip the sound event flag. I toggled the audio monitor on for a few seconds. Hiss. Nothing else. I toggled it off and checked the log. 01:32. Brief acoustic variance, threshold, no audible event. For the next hour, nothing. Pressure grid, 0.00 deviation. Vibration, nominal. Acoustic, baseline. I settled into the rhythm of glancing from one panel to the other. Checked my watch, checked the door. Wrote unchanged more times than felt reasonable for one night. Around 02:40, the smell hit me. Concrete and dust had been the only scents down here when I arrived. Now, layered faintly over them, came something else. Not incense. That has a church smell. Resin and spice and smoke. This was wrong. Sweet in the way things get right before they rot, like fruit left too long in a bowl. A hint of something metallic underneath it, almost coppery. There were no vents in this corridor, no open trash cans, no flowers. I logged it. 02.41. Unidentified odor. Sweet, metallic, in corridor. No visible source. The panel showed no change in air composition. No spike in particulates. No gas detection alerts. Oxygen normal. CO2 normal. The longer I sat with it, the more I realized the smell felt directional. Stronger when I leaned slightly toward the door. Weaker when I leaned back. I did not step over the line to check. I sat. I watched. At 030 on the dot, one of the LEDs on the acoustic panel flicked from green to amber for a fraction of a second, then back. The system chimed once, a little polite ding. Acoustic variance, low. I pressed the monitor toggle before my brain could talk me out of it. At first, the speakers gave me the usual soft hiss of an empty corridor. Then, under it, I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Human breathing has a rhythm. You hear enough of it, on calls, in holding cells, in the barracks. You learn the sound of fear, of exhaustion, of sleep. This wasn't any of those. The inhales were too slow. The exhales came a little too late, like whoever was on the other side of the microphones was waiting to see what the air would do to their lungs before deciding what to send back. I shut the audio off. My thumb hovered over the red flip cover on the alarm button. Protocol said, sustained event or any pattern crossing high threshold. This had been a single amber, a blip. Not sustained, not technically an emergency. My gut said, nothing human should be breathing behind a lightless stone box that hasn't been opened in years. I logged it. 0301. Breathing like acoustic pattern detected. 4 sec. Low variance. No external source visible. Then, because my supervisor had stressed it hard, I called control. The landline rang twice before a bored voice answered. Control, it said. Delta Post, I said. This is Gatewatch. I've got minor anomalies on Chamber 0. Small thermal dip earlier. Now an acoustic blip. Breathing pattern. No external source. A pause. Fingers clacked on a keyboard at the other end. Readings within amber? The voice asked. Just touched it and dropped, I said. Log it and continue observation, he said. Call again if anything goes sustained or crosses into red. That's it, I said. This isn't our first night with a little noise down there, he said. If it sneezes, we don't send in the exorcists. Just keep your eyes on the panel. He hung up. I put the receiver down carefully and stared at the door. Somewhere behind it, meters of stone away, something drew another slow, deliberate breath. The next hour crawled. The smell intensified. The thermal readings showed another tiny dip, then a slow climb. The magnetometer line wobbled barely. 1/10 of a point, nothing that would mean anything outside a lab. The acoustic channel stayed flat. No more blips. No knocks. I began to wonder if I'd imagined it. 03.45. All readings within baseline. Odor persists. Around 4, fatigue hit. The kind that doesn't care when you went to sleep last, only that you're here now, asking your nervous system to stay alert in a room where nothing is supposed to happen. I stood, stretched the stiffness out of my back, walked in a small circle behind the desk, careful not to cross the line. Sat again. The chair creaked. The concrete under my boots felt solid, steady. The door at the end of the corridor remained a blank, heavy rectangle. Just a box, I told myself. Just rock and steel and old stories. At 0412, the pressure grid changed. Not by much. The numbers ticked up by 0.02, maybe 0.03 on one of the 16 cells, the way they would if someone had set down a small weight directly behind the center of the door. The system flagged it. Pressure variance, cell 09, plus 0.03 kPa. The light for that cell flicked amber and stayed there. I stared at the panel. Nothing on the camera feed, nothing in the corridor. Control Delta, I said into the phone. We've got a sustained pressure anomaly on Chamber 0. Single cell, minimal, but it's not resolving. More keyboard clacks. Copy, Delta, Control said. Log it. We're watching the feed up here too. Still no movement on your side. No, I said. All quiet this side of the rock. Then all we can do is watch, he said. You get anything else? Any sound? Any sudden spikes? You let us know. He hung up. The number held. 0.03, 0.03, 0.03. Massless movement. My brain supplied unhelpfully. Pressure without weight. When the knock came, it was so soft the microphones barely caught it. A tiny blip on the graph. A faint, dull sound through the speaker when I snapped the audio on. Touch. Not the wild pounding you'd expect from something desperate. Not the angry hammering of a cliché demon. Just a test. Fingers on the inside of a door. Protocol said log, report, wait. The part of me that had grown up in small churches in bad neighborhoods, that had watched old women cross themselves when they passed shrines, wanted to stand and back away. I stayed seated. I logged it. 0419. Single faint knock from interior side of chamber 0, acoustic. Pressure variance on cell 09 holds. I picked up the phone again. Control. We've got knocking now, I said. Low level, but definitely contact from inside. Silence on the line. Then a different voice came on. Older. Clipped. This is command, it said. Gatewatch, confirm, one knock only? Single so far, I said. Sensors show minor pressure increase at central grid cell, no further change. Any secondary anomalies? Odor. Like before, I said. Breathing pattern earlier. Those have stabilized. Acoustic and pressure are the active ones. Understood, he said. You will remain on post. Do not approach the door. Do not attempt contact. We are not declaring code black at this level. This is a code gray observation. Copy, I said. Just to be clear, what qualifies as code black? You'll know if we call it, he said. And if we don't, you're better off not knowing. He hung up. Somewhere behind the door, stone and steel and whatever was in the dark settled. The pressure reading ticked down by 0.01, then up by 0.02, then held again. It felt like someone shifting their weight from one foot to the other. I stared at the plate that said, Chamber 0. They say you never change, I said under my breath. You like proving people wrong? Silence. Then, another knock. Louder this time. Not loud enough to rattle the hinges, but firm, deliberate. 2 beats. Talk. Talk. The acoustic light went amber and stayed there. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My hand drifted again toward the red cover over the emergency button. Command had said code gray, observe, report. Don't panic. Protocol was a thin, crisp sheet of paper between me and a very old stone box. My thumb flipped the cover up. The button waited, glossy and red. Say something, a stupid part of me thought. Ask who it is. That's what you do at a door. Every line of my training said the opposite. You do not initiate contact. You do not attempt visual access. You do not feed whatever is on the other side with anything it can use. I shut the audio off again and pressed the cover back down. The third knock came a minute later. This one came with a vibration spike. Tiny, a hairline blip on the seismograph, like a pulse rather than a... The thermal readout on the door's exterior climbed by 0.4 degrees in 3 seconds, then leveled off. Control, Delta, I said. We've got repeated knocks now, plus minor vibrational and thermal response. It's active. We see it, Command said. Stay on post, hold position. What if it escalates? I asked. Then we call the men upstairs who wear the collars instead of the badges, he said. Until then, it's a box with a thing inside it and a man with a job outside it. Do yours. That was the thing about working for people who believed in miracles and monsters. They never got as scared as you wanted them to. The knocks stopped. The numbers settled. The smell thinned. By 05:00, the corridor could almost have been any other dead hallway under any other building. If not for the slight, steady pressure variance on cell 09, plus 0.03, like a weight that had decided to make itself comfortable. The rest of my shift played out in that uneasy, almost calm. I logged. I watched. I called in minor fluctuations. Command told me, over and over, that this was within the category of uncharming, but not apocalyptic. At 06:55, my relief arrived. A younger guard with fresh eyes and a too-new uniform that still smelled of starch. Anything? He asked, nodding toward the door. Minor noise, I said. A few knocks, some pressure weirdness. Nothing that made them push the big red button. He peered down the corridor. Still feels like a wall, he said. Good, I said. Treat it that way. I walked him through the log, showed him the blips. showed him where I'd underlined certain entries, told him 3 times not to touch the alarm unless the panel lit up like Christmas. Then I rode the elevator back up to the living floors, the ones with windows and sunlight and the distant murmur of tourists. I signed my debrief in my supervisor's office. "Quiet night?" he asked. "Mostly," I said. He scanned the log. His eyes lingered on the 419 entry. His jaw tightened, just a little. "First time you've heard that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" "Not personally," he said. "But every few years, it remembers we're here. And we do—" "What?" I asked. "We remember back," he said. "That's all." He handed the sheet back. "Get some sleep," he said. "You're on again tonight." I should have gone straight to the barracks. Instead, I detoured through one of the older archive rooms. On a high shelf, in a section where the firm kept its own records instead of the church's, there were boxes labeled Delta, Historical. I knew better. Curiosity is the enemy of protocol. Curiosity put things behind doors like Chamber 0 in the first place. Still. I slid one box out, opened it. Inside, neatly stacked, were old log sheets, very much like the one I'd just turned in. Same columns, same lines, different dates, different hands. I flipped through until one set of entries stopped me. 19 something. Decades ago. The ink had faded just enough to spider into the paper. The handwriting was precise, formal. Italian first, English notes in the margins. 0302. 3 knocks from interior. 0305. Acoustic patterns. Breathing. 0310. Pressure variance. 0.04. Central cell. 03.15. Thermal increase on door face. 0.8 degxi. 03.17. Command notified of active event. 03.20. Directive received. Hold post. Observe. No visual contact. 0322. Note in English. It knows we are here. No elaboration. No explanation of how the man who wrote that could be sure. I put the sheet back in the box, closed it, returned it to the shelf. That night, when I went back down, the corridor felt the same. Same concrete. Same hum of strip lights. Same door. The only difference was in me. Because now, when the first faint knock came, soft as fingers on the wrong side of a coffin lid, I didn't just hear sound. I heard intent. And the awful, very human part of me that hates being ignored whispered back, under my breath, before I could stop it. "I hear you." The second time I said, "I hear you," I wasn't sure which side of the door I was lying to. On my side, it was bravado. A tired man in a bolted-down chair trying to convince himself he had any agency in a corridor where the most important thing about him was that he could still push a red button. On the other side, if there was a lie, it was different. Whatever was in Chamber 0 had spent decades teaching people that listening and seeing aren't the same thing. The knock that answered me was almost gentle. Talk. Talk. Same spot. Same weight transfer on the pressure grid. Cell 09 up another 0. Duo 1, holding now at a neat +0.04. Enough to say, yes, something is there. Not enough to tell you what it is without opening the damn door. I didn't. I did what I was supposed to. "Control, Delta," I said into the phone. "Acoustic and pressure anomalies continuing. Repeated knocks. Variance holding, slight increase." Command came back with the same clipped assurance as the night before. "Logged," the older voice said. "No change to status. Continue observation." "Understood," I said, and hung up. The smell had returned too, thicker now. Sweet rotten, metallic. It clung to the back of my throat like sacramental wine gone off. I tried to focus on the numbers instead of the sensory details. Pressure, +0.04. Vibration, occasional microspikes. Thermal, 13.8 dC on the door face, 13.4 dC on the wall. Magnetic, baseline plus noise. At 0110, the air composition sampler chimed for the first time since I'd been assigned to Delta. AIR sample variance, volatiles. The readout ticked up by a fraction on organics. Not enough to trigger an alarm, just enough to register that some new molecule had joined the mix. I logged it. Oro 111. Trace volatile organic compounds detected. Likely source. Unknown odor persisting. Upstairs, someone in a lab might have been able to tell me whether that meant anything. Down here, all it meant was that the smell was real enough to show up in numbers. The knocks came every few minutes, irregular in timing but consistent in tone. Not a pattern. Not Morse. Not a coded message asking to be decrypted. Just proof of presence. Talk, 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 talk. The human brain hates unstructured repetition. Give us a rhythm, and we'll find meaning. Give us enough time with nothing but that, and we'll start to supply words to it. By Zo Tu Baoes, each knock landed like a syllable. Here, here, here. I flicked the audio off again and stared at the door instead. That was a mistake. With the speakers silent, the corridor's own silence grew louder. My ears strained for sounds my training told me not to chase. My eyes kept drifting to the tiny gap between the bottom of the door and the floor, a strip barely wider than a thumbnail, sealed by a steel threshold. I knew, intellectually, that there was nothing to see there. Even if there had been light in the chamber, the geometry wouldn't allow a line of sight from here. The door was set into a recess. The floor under it dipped, then rose. Millimeters of steel and stone still sat between my pupils and whatever waited in the dark. Still, some treacherous part of my mind whispered that if I just leaned a little, angled my head just so, I might catch the faintest difference in black. I didn't. Instead, I picked up the logbook and flipped back to the old entry from decades ago, the one with the underlined note, "It knows we are here." "Did you talk first?" I asked the dead man's handwriting under my breath. Or did it? Maybe it didn't matter. At 0217, the acoustic line jumped again. Not a knock this time. A scrape. Long, low, as if something soft, cloth, skin, had dragged along the inside of the door. The pressure grid flickered, deviating by another hair, then steadied. I snapped the audio on mid-sound. It was worse with the hiss stripped away. Up close, the scrape had texture. Not the gritty rasp of stone on stone, but the whisper of something yielding against something that wasn't. Like breath dragged along metal. I shut the audio off and hit the phone. "Control Delta," I said. "We've got a new pattern." Scraping along the interface. "Logged," the younger voice said this time. "No structural strain showing on our end. No code black. You still okay?" The question threw me. "I'm fine," I lied. "Any dizziness? Auditory hallucinations? Time gaps?" he pressed. "Protocol says we have to ask." "No," I said. "I'm logging clean. I know what time it is. I know where I am. I am not hearing voices, just knocks and scrapes." "Good," he said, with the air of a man checking boxes. "Keep it that way." He hung up. That was when the phone on the desk rang again. Not the line to control. The other one. The one that went only to a single extension upstairs. The firm's liaison office with the Holy See. I'd never heard it ring. The sound was jarring, an ordinary trilling in a place that had become defined by anything but. I picked up. "Delta Post," I said. "Gatewatch." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, male, Italian with an accent that dragged the consonants. Older, but not frail. "This is Father Moreschi. We weren't supposed to know names beyond our own chain of command, but some slipped through." Moreschi was one of those. A priest who sat in meetings where uniforms and collars mixed. The kind of man who signed off on things that never appeared in public ledgers. "Yes, Father," I said. "I've been informed you have minor activity on Chamber 0, he said. "Nothing severe." "That's what they tell me," I said. "You've heard knocking," he said. "Yes." "And scraping." "Yes." "Have you spoken?" he asked. My mouth went dry. "Spoken?" "To it," he said. Technically, the answer was yes. I'd muttered, "I hear you," under my breath like an idiot at the end of a long shift. I hadn't addressed it by name, whatever that might be. I hadn't asked questions. "I haven't initiated contact," I said carefully. He hummed thoughtfully. "Good," he said. "Keep it that way." "Father," I said before I could stop myself. "What is it?" Silence. Finally, "You have read some of the old logs," he said. Not a question. "Yes," I admitted. "Then you know as much as any of us," he said. "And less than some of us would like to admit." "That's not an answer," I said. "There is no short answer," he said. "But here is what matters tonight. It is accustomed to being ignored. The silence is part of the treaty. It has its space, we have ours. When it knocks, you log it, and let us decide whether to listen. You do not answer the door like a concierge. You're worried that me saying anything at all counts as breaking that," I said. "Worried?" he said, almost amused. "My son." Worry is for men who still believe they can prevent what's coming. I am attentive. You should be too. If it keep pushing, I said. At what point do we do more than log? When the sensors cross thresholds we agreed on, he said. Or when it breaks its side of the treaty. I thought you said silence was part of our side, not theirs. I did not say what was written on their side of the paper, he said. Good night, Gatewatch. Keep your voice to yourself. He hung up. The line clicked back into silence. I set the receiver down carefully. Silence pressed in. Talk. The next knock came directly under that part of my skull that turns sound into meaning. I didn't need the speakers to hear it. I didn't answer. For a while, that was enough. The pattern held. Occasional knocks, minor scrapes, a stubborn little bubble of weight on cell 09. The thermal readings wavered between 13.7 and 13.9 on the door exterior. Air composition drifted just enough to say the smell was real, not imagined. Something was moving in there, in a space designed to have no light, no sound, no human eyes. At 0330, all the numbers flatlined, not in the bad sense, in the unsettling one. Odor gone. Thermal exactly baseline. Pressure variance easing back towards zero. Magnetics smoothing. Even the faint sense of presence that had been clinging to the corridor, that somebody else is in the room, lifted. For 20 minutes, Chamber 0 behaved as if nothing had ever been in it. I should have been relieved. Instead, unease thickened. Because absence, after that much subtle activity, didn't feel like safety. It felt like someone holding their breath. I checked my watch. 03:49. The second hand ticked. 3 more minutes. Tick. Another. Tick. At 03:52, every LED on the sensor panel flashed red at once. The alarm wasn't a polite ding this time. It was a full-throated rising wail that vibrated my teeth. Code black. Chamber 0. The display screamed in block letters. My hand hit the emergency button before my conscious mind caught up. Control, this is Delta. We are in code black, I shouted over the siren, though I knew punching the button had already sent that message a dozen different ways. All channels red. Repeat. All channels red. Above the noise, another sound threaded in. Not from the speakers, from the concrete. A deep, low groan, as if the building itself had decided to shift. The pressure grid numbers spiked. P004 jumped to P0.10 on cell 09, then P0.12, as if something on the other side had leaned heavily against the exact center of the door. The thermal reading on the door face climbed a full degree in seconds. The magnetometer value whipped sideways, numbers shedding significance. The siren cut mid-howl, replaced by commands. Delta, this is command, he said. Back away from the door. Repeat, back away from the door now. Maintain visual on the corridor only. Do not approach. Do not look at any gap. I realized my chair had rolled forward during the eruption, inching closer to the yellow line without my permission. I pushed it back hard enough to bump the rear stops. Already doing that, I said, voice too high. The deep groan subsided into a low, steady vibration I could feel through the soles of my boots. Not an earthquake. Not the random rattle of a train or distant blast. Localized, door centered. Something pushed from the dark side. The pressure hit +0.15. My mind supplied images. My eyes mercifully couldn't confirm. Hands on steel. Shoulders. Faces. What are your visual indicators? Command demanded. Door intact, I said, forcing my voice flat. No visible deformation. No cracks in frame. All motion is on the instrumentation. Understood, he said. In the background I could hear other voices. Rapid-fire Italian, the clipped Latin cadence of prayer, the low mutter of tactical brief lines. Stay with me, Gatewatch, he said. You are our eyes on that corridor. We're dispatching response team and clergy to your level now. Response team, I repeated. The men with the heavier toys. Estimate? I asked. 8 minutes, he said. 8 minutes. Pressure, +0.16. Thermal, 15.0 degrees C on the door face. Acoustic. Off the charts, not from noise but from the constant hiss, like a microphone pressed to a seashell full of whispers. I didn't dare toggle the audio on. Talk to me, command said. Door still visually stable, I said. We've got something pressing from the interior. Numbers say contact area is small but focused. No visible bulging on this side. Threshold before deformation is 0.40, he reminded me. We're well below that. You breathe. You log. You do not panic before the concrete does. Easy for a voice several floors up to say. Copy, I said through clenched teeth. The knocks had stopped. So had the scrapes. Whatever was on the other side wasn't trying to politely announce itself anymore. It was testing the integrity of the only thing between it and the rest of the building. Pressure, 0.18. Sweat trickled down my back. Outside the circle of my little station, the corridor seemed to dim. Not because the lights flickered, but because my focus narrowed until all that existed was the panel and the rectangle of metal at the far end of the hall. Somewhere in there, my stupid mouth moved without permission. You're not getting through, I whispered. The vibration under my feet pulsed, like a heartbeat skipped. Gatewatch! Command snapped immediately. You say something? To you, I said quickly. Do not address it, he said. If it wants an argument, it can come upstairs and find a theologian. The pressure numbers held at Fralro 18 for a long, excruciating 30 seconds. Then, slowly, they began to drop. Fralro 17. Fralro 15. Fralro 12. The magnetics smoothed. The thermal reading on the door face sank back toward baseline. The siren, which had been idle since the initial cascade, stayed silent. Status? Command demanded. Contact easing, I said. All channels trending back toward nominal. No visible change in door. If you see so much as a flake of concrete fall, you tell me, he said. I will, I said. The pressure variance settled at +0.05, a little higher than before, but no longer screaming at the edges of the gauges. I realized I'd been holding my breath and forced myself to inhale. Something, on the other side of meters of stone and steel and darkness, exhaled with me. The smell came back, stronger than before. Response team is 2 minutes out, Command said. You will maintain post until relieved. Do not leave the corridor unless ordered. Understood, I said. The elevator at the far end of sub-level Delta hummed to life. The doors slid open, and the cavalry stepped out. They did not look like movie exorcists. No fluttering cassocks or swinging sensors. The response team wore the same kind of tactical gear I'd seen on SWAT units elsewhere. Helmets, vests, sidearms, heavier weapons slung. The only real difference was the addition of small silver crosses sewn above their name tapes, and a priest walking among them with a small case in one hand and a stole tucked into his belt. They stopped at the yellow line. Report, the team leader said, visor up. I rattled off the numbers. The code black. The spike and the retreat. He nodded once, then glanced at the door. Nothing on the outside, he said. That's what I told them, I said. The priest stepped forward. His hair was white, his eyes dark. He looked at the door the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray of a tumor he's already cut out once. Any voices? He asked. Only mine and theirs, I said, nodding toward the team. And yours from upstairs last night. He gave me a brief, unreadable look. Good, he said. The team set up quickly. 2 men took positions flanking the corridor, weapons ready, but pointed at the floor. Another unpacked a device that looked like an overbuilt metal detector and plugged it into a junction box. The priest laid out a cloth on my desk and placed a few items on it. A small silver crucifix, a vial of something, a book worn soft with use. Gatewatch, the team leader said. You're staying put. I didn't argue. He and the priest stepped as close to the yellow line as they were allowed. Chamber 0, the priest said softly, voice taking on a formal cadence. We acknowledge your stirring. We acknowledge our presence. We remind you that the treaty holds. He slipped into Latin for the next part, words rolling like they'd been burned into his tongue decades ago. I caught phrases, pactum, terminus, silentium, but not enough to reconstruct the whole. He finished with the sign of the cross toward the door. Nothing dramatic happened. No howling from the other side. No shaking walls. The panel numbers stayed where they were. Sometimes that's all it takes, he said quietly to the... Sometimes not. Tonight? The leader asked. The priest's eyes flicked to me. Tonight it is listening, he said. That is both better and worse than it pretending to sleep. They stayed for an hour, instruments humming, prayers murmured at intervals. The team never crossed the line. No one touched the door. By the time they left, The readings had drifted back closer to true baseline than they'd been since my assignment started. Pressure variance, plus 0.02, thermal, 13.5 degrees Celsius, magnetics, baseline. My shift ended not long after. In my debrief, my supervisor asked the usual questions plus a few extra. Any headaches? Any ringing in my ears? Any missing time? No, I said each time. He glanced at the log, tapped the code black entry. Congratulations, he said dryly. You've seen more real action in 2 nights than some of our people see in 20 years. I saw numbers, I said. If that was action, I'm fine keeping my career boring. He almost smiled. Get some rest, he said. You're on again tomorrow. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it brought dreams of doors, not just Chamber 0. Every door I'd ever guarded, every threshold I'd ever stood beside, all lined up in a corridor that curved out of sight. On the other side of every one, something breathed in the dark. When the alarm dragged me back up, I felt like I'd barely closed my eyes. The 3rd night on Delta started like the 2nd. Same elevator, same line of paint, same door. But the quiet felt different. Less like absence. More like someone watching through a peephole. The numbers agreed. Baseline. 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 But with a new jitter in the acoustic floor. A new flavor in the magnetics. Subthreshold. Not enough to flag. Enough for someone who'd been staring at these graphs for days to notice. I tried to pretend I didn't. Log. Glance. Breathe. At door 1 South, Moreski called again. Gatewatch, he said. How is our patient? Resting, I said. For now. And you? He asked. Awake, I said. Good, he said. Remember that the treaty is older than you, older than me, older than most of the hands upstairs. It has survived worse nights than this. You are not holding it alone. It was meant to reassure. It didn't. Do you think it understands those prayers? I asked before I could stop myself. Understanding is not the point, he said. We speak them for our sake, not its. We remind ourselves of the lines. And if it wants new lines? I asked. He was silent for a moment. If you hear it ask, he said finally. Do not answer. He hung up. I sat there with the receiver in my hand, staring at the door, and made a decision that, depending on how history ends, will be called either the dumbest thing I've ever done, or the only reason anyone will still be around to call it anything. I picked the phone back up. Not the line to control. The old, analog direct line meant for emergencies that didn't fit into the firm's neat flowcharts. The one they'd installed when they realized that sometimes the budget and the Bible had to share a conversation. It rang twice. Office of the Promoter of Justice, a tired voice said in Italian. Put me through to whoever still remembers why Chamber 0 exists, I said. There was a pause. Who is this? Gatewatch, I said. Sub-level Delta. Another pause, longer. Hold, the voice said. I did. After a while, a new voice came on. Gatewatch, it said. Leon this time. The old priest from the first emergency stories I shouldn't have heard. You have picked an unfashionable time to reach out. Unfashionable? I repeated. There are people upstairs who would prefer Chamber 0 never be mentioned outside certain rooms, he said. Every time you call one of those rooms from down there, they have to remember it exists. That makes them irritable. Good, I said. They should be. He made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. What do you need? He asked. Last night, it pushed, I said. Your response boys saw the numbers. Your exorcist did his Latin. It backed off. Today, everything is calm. Quieter than it should be. It feels wrong. Wrong how? Like it's waiting for a particular thing, I said. Not just any stimulus. Mine. You think it has fixed on you, he said. I know it has, I said. Every time I sit down here, the numbers twitch just enough to say hello. Every time someone else covers my break, they don't. That has happened before, he said. I gripped the phone tighter. You put me here for a reason, I said. Not just because my psych tests say I can stare at a wall for 8 hours without jumping. What is it? Because you still believe rules matter. Because you are obedient enough to sit where we put you, but not so obedient that you'll ignore a treaty you know nothing about being trampled. Because you talk back under your breath even when you know you shouldn't. You heard that, I said. Not directly, he said. But something else did, and it's interested. The word made my skin crawl. Interested how? I asked. As in, he said, you are not the first nor the last man to sit that post. But you are the first in a long time it has reacted to with more than boredom. For decades, it ignored the guards, then Ricci, then nobody, now you. Maybe it's just bored, I said. Maybe, he said. Or maybe it recognizes patterns better than we do. In any case, the old terms did not anticipate you. That could be leverage. Whose? I asked. Ours, if you keep your head, he said. Theirs, if you don't. Something rapped softly behind the door. Talk. Gate watch, Leone said, hearing it over the line. Do you trust me? I thought about that. I trust that you know more than I do, I said. And that you're still here, which suggests you haven't been entirely wrong so far. He chuckled. I will take that as a yes, he said. Listen carefully. Officially, your job is to watch and log. Unofficially, tonight, you are going to do something else. You are going to refuse. Refuse what? Whatever it asks, he said. I thought the rule was I don't answer at all, I said. Silence is one kind of answer, he said. Defiance is another. It has heard plenty of the first. It has not heard enough of the second. Another knock. Talk. Talk. Gate watch, a voice said from the other side of the door. Not from the speakers. From the steel. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My name, in my language, rolled through meters of barrier as if whispered directly into my ear. Leone fell silent. Do not, he began. I put the handset down on the desk without hanging up. I didn't toggle the audio on. I didn't move from behind the line, but I spoke. You don't get that name, I said. Quiet settled. Then, softly, you told me you heard me, the not voice said. It would be rude not to learn what to call you. It had no accent I could place. No rasp, no hiss. Just a neutral male tone that could have come from any faceless functionary in any of the offices above. That was my mistake, I said. Won't make it twice. Everyone makes it twice, it said. Usually more. That's why I'm here. That's one version, I said. I've read others. You've been in the boxes, it said. Good. Then you know your people never tell the same story twice. I know they keep sealing away things they're scared to admit they made deals with, I said. It laughed, low and without humor. They made a deal with fear long before they made one with me, it said. Fear of losing, fear of being seen to lose, fear of writing their failures in ink instead of legend. It is not my fault they prefer the dark. You sound very hurt for something sealed in a lightless room for our sake, I said. Hurt? It said. No. Amused. You humans have such a talent for turning your own choices into tragedies and calling yourselves victims. The urge to ask questions burned. What are you? Who put you here? What do you want? Instead, I forced my mind back to the one instruction Leone had given me. Refuse. You knocked, I said. You pushed. You set off alarms you knew would bring people down here. Why? Because boredom is a kind of heat, it said. It warps things. Because your side missed a few appointments. And I am old-fashioned enough to insist on punctuality. Because the last man in your chair made a promise, and no one upstairs cared enough to honor it. Ricci, I said. Yes, it said. He opened the hatch, I said. A pause. Briefly, it said. The word carried too much. I'm not him, I said. I know, it said. He was scared when he broke. You are angry. Different flavors. Same crack. You saw fear as leverage, I said. You see anger as what? Energy, it said. Direction. Anger can be pointed. Fear just runs. Pressure. 0.03. Magnetics. Jittering. The numbers said it had stepped closer again, metaphorically, if not literally. You want me to open that door, I said. If I wanted you to open the door, Gatewatch, there would be no door, it said. Do you think steel and stone matter to something that has moved through worse? No. That barrier is for your sake, not mine. Then what do you want? For you to do your job, it said simply. Guard the chamber. Keep the light out. Keep the cameras out. Keep the anxious, curious minds upstairs from poking holes. Every time you hold the line down here, I do not have to remind them what they asked me to hold back out there. Hold back what? I asked. The worst versions of themselves, it said. You think demons make men cruel. We only ever amplify. Give us nothing to work with and we are bored. Give us a little greed, anger, shame, and we can build empires. Your church came to me when those empires were cracking. They asked for time. I agreed, under terms. They forgot some of those terms. And you want to renegotiate, I said. Not with them, it said. They are old, tired, afraid of their own archives. I want to renegotiate with the people who actually sit at the doors. People like me, I said. Yes, it said. I don't sign treaties, I said. I sign timesheets. You sign logs, it said. You decide what to write and what to cross out. In a bureaucracy built on paper, that is power, whether you like it or not. Silence stretched. Behind me, the handset Leone was still on crackled faintly. His voice a distant murmur I couldn't make out. Here are my terms, I said, surprising myself. You knock, we log. We keep the light out and the sensors on. You stop pushing on the door like you did last night. No more code black. You think you can dictate terms? It said, amused. I think I can refuse yours, I said. I waited for anger. It didn't come. Instead, the pressure variance on cell 09 ticked down another fraction. Pseudo-02. You interest me, Gatewatch, it said. Most of your colleagues down here either ignore me or beg. You negotiate. That is refreshing. I'm not negotiating, I said. I'm drawing a line. Lines can become signatures, it said. Careful where you write. The smell thinned again. The numbers settled. For the rest of the shift, Chamber 0 behaved. No more knocks. No more scrapes. No more pushes. Baseline. When my relief arrived, he found me tired but not shaking. The logbook thick with neat entries and a few underlines. Quiet again? He asked. For now, I said. My debrief with my supervisor was shorter. Fewer anomalies to go over. Fewer code-level events to justify. You look like hell, he said, as I handed over the sheet. Smells worse down there, I said. You want off Delta? He asked, and the fact that he asked at all told me I wasn't hiding the strain as well as I thought. I thought about lying, about saying yes, take me back to the halls with framed art and predictable air. But I also thought about what the voice behind the door had said, that the barrier was for us, not it. That every time someone like me sat in that chair and did or did not do certain things, it calibrated how much effort it needed to spend on its side of the treaty. No, I said. I'll stay. He studied me for a moment, then nodded once. Report any interior conversations, he said. Am I allowed to say I refused? I asked. He huffed. That's a new one, he said. Most of them either deny or confess. Refusal is in short supply up there. Maybe we could use more of it. That night, before I went to my bunk, I stopped by the box in the archive again, pulled out the old sheet. Under Ricci's neat, "It knows we are here," I wrote. We know it is there. We remember the terms. We do not open. I didn't sign my name. Didn't need to. The next time I sat at the desk on sublevel Delta, the corridor felt the same. The door looked the same. The sensors hummed, ready. But the weight on cell 09 read 0.00. Whatever moved in that lightless chamber had shifted its attention. For now, it seemed, my refusal was enough of an answer.